They say punctuality is the politeness of kings. But what if the king isn't human? And what if being late is the only reason you stay alive? On a freezing Christmas Eve in Manhattan, Melanie Hayes wasn't just late for a blind date. She was 47 minutes overdue to meet a man that half the city feared and the other half secretly served. She was a broke single mom with a coffee stain on her coat, a cheap clutch in her hand, and a 6-year-old son at home who couldn't breathe right without medicine she couldn't afford. He was Sebastian Crowe, the vampire king of New York. Everyone expected him to leave. Everyone expected him to punish her. Instead, he waited. And that single choice, quiet, impossible and deeply personal, would drag Melanie into a world where kindness could be a weapon, humility could be a test, and love could be a sentence. The notification on Melanie's cracked phone screen felt like a countdown to disaster. Uber arrival, 14 minutes. 14 minutes? She whispered, breath fogging the glass of the bus stop shelter on 42nd Street. It's supposed to be 3. New York City glittered like it didn't know what struggling was. Christmas lights clung to every storefront. People laughed with shopping bags in hand. The air smelled like roasted chestnuts and expensive perfume drifting from department store doors that swung open like invitations. For everyone else, tonight was about holiday magic. For Melanie, tonight was survival wearing a dress. She looked down at herself. The black dress was second-hand, thrift store cheap, and held together by tiny safety pins where she tried to fix the hem. Over it, she wore a beige trench coat that had seen better winters than this one. And on the lapel, like a cruel stamp of failure, sat a fresh coffee stain from when a tourist had bumped into her near Times Square. Melanie rubbed it with her thumb as if she could erase it. The stain didn't move. Her phone buzzed again. A text from her sister, Chloe. Did you meet him yet? Another came right after. Lisa said he's private jet loaded. Don't mess this up, Mel. Think of Toby. Toby. The name tightened her chest like a hand closing around her ribs. Her son, 6 years old, bright-eyed, too thin, was at Chloe's apartment in Queens right now. He'd been coughing for days, that deep rattle that turned Melanie's stomach into ice. The doctor called it chronic bronchitis. Melanie called it the reason she didn't sleep. The inhalers cost more than she made in a shift. Her rent was overdue. And her manager at the diner had cut her hours because holiday budgets were tight, even though he'd just bought himself a new watch and laughed about it to the cooks. This blind date wasn't a fantasy. It wasn't romance. It wasn't even hope. It was a desperate attempt to catch a miracle before it walked away. Lisa, her old college friend, now married into a world where people had drivers and Christmas parties on rooftops, had insisted on setting her up. He's intense, Lisa had said earlier that week, voice dropping like she was telling a secret. European old money. He's powerful. And he's looking for someone real. Don't overthink it. Just show up. And why would a man like that want me? Melanie had asked, already embarrassed. Lisa had paused, like she was choosing her words carefully. Because he doesn't want a woman who's been spoiled by wealth. He wants softness. Honesty. Someone who doesn't fake it. Melanie had laughed bitterly. Softness doesn't pay coned. Lisa had sighed. He tips $500 for a glass of water. Melanie hadn't wanted a tip. She'd wanted her son to breathe. The Uber finally pulled up, except it wasn't the sleek black car the app promised. It was a dented Toyota Camry with a scratch along the passenger door and a driver who looked like he'd been awake for 3 days straight. Melanie rushed in anyway, slush soaking her boots. The Plaza Hotel, she said, voice shaking. Please. I'm already late. The driver didn't even look back. Christmas Eve, lady. Gridlock. You get there when you get there. Melanie sank against the seat, pressing her forehead to the cold window. 47 minutes late. Rich men didn't wait 47 minutes. Rich men checked their watches and decided you weren't worth it. She imagined her date. Older, arrogant, impatient. Someone who would see the coffee stain and decide she didn't belong in his world. She imagined arriving at an empty table. She imagined going home, staring at Toby while he slept, and whispering, "I'm sorry," into the dark like an apology would heal his lungs. Hot tears came fast, humiliating and sudden. Melanie wiped them away hard. No crying, she told herself. Not tonight. The car crawled along Fifth Avenue like the city was deliberately testing her. Every red light felt personal. Every honking horn sounded like judgment. When the driver finally muttered, "We're here," Melanie almost fell out of the car trying to move fast enough. The Plaza Hotel rose in front of her like a castle carved from golden light. Doormen in heavy coats held doors for women in furs, for men with polished shoes and smiles that belonged to people who never checked their bank balance. Meline stood still for half a second, staring. This place wasn't made for someone like her. Then she thought of Toby's wheezing. And she straightened her spine. She pulled her coat tight to hide the stain as much as possible, lifted her chin, and walked through the revolving doors like she belonged there, even if her heart was pounding like it was trying to escape. Warmth hit her first. Then scent, pine, cinnamon, expensive perfume. Then sound, laughter, crystal clinking, the soft murmur of people who spoke like the world listened. Meline's hands trembled as she approached the host's stand. The maitre d' looked her up and down with a glance sharp enough to cut. His eyes flicked to her wet boots. "Reservation?" he asked, voice polite in the way that meant no. Meline swallowed. "Crow," she said. "Sebastian Crow. I'm the guest." The man's expression changed so fast it almost scared her. Disdain vanished. Color drained from his face. His posture snapped upright like someone had pulled a string. "Mr. Crow," he whispered, suddenly cautious. He swallowed hard. We did not think you were coming, madam." "I know I'm late," Meline stammered. "Traffic. Please, is he still here?" The maitre d' hesitated, eyes darting toward the back of the palm court where velvet drapes and shadows created a secluded alcove. He lowered his voice like the walls had ears. "Mr. Crow does not wait for anyone. Usually." Meline's stomach dropped. Then he added, almost unwillingly, "But tonight, he is still seated. Follow me." Immediately. The walk through the restaurant felt like walking toward judgment. As they moved, the air changed. People's conversations softened. Heads turned. Not toward her, toward where she was being led. The tables near the back corner were empty, as if the entire room had agreed on an invisible boundary no one dared cross. A quiet circle of space surrounded one booth draped in shadow. In the center sat a man. Meline expected older. She expected balding. She expected someone who looked like money in a boring way. This man looked like danger in a beautiful way. Sebastian Crow appeared to be in his early 30s. He wore a charcoal suit that fit him with predatory precision, fabric so dark it seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. His hair was black, swept back, revealing a face too sharp and symmetrical to feel safe. He was reading a leather-bound book. A glass of dark red wine sat untouched in front of him. But it wasn't his looks that made Meline's throat tighten. It was his stillness. He was perfectly motionless. Not a single impatient tap. Not a single restless shift. It wasn't the stillness of a man waiting. It was the stillness of something that didn't need to wait for anyone. The maitre d' bowed low, too low. "Your guest, Mr. Crow." Sebastian closed his book slowly. He didn't look up right away. He lifted his wine glass, swirled the crimson liquid, then raised his eyes. When his gaze met Meline's, her breath vanished. His eyes were icy blue rimmed with darkness, like winter sky around a solar eclipse. Cold washed over her skin. Then heat, sudden and deep, like she'd stepped too close to a fire. "Meline Hayes," he said. His voice was velvet wrapped around a blade, smooth, calm, and quietly absolute. There was an accent there, old and hard to place, like Europe had carved it into his tongue centuries ago. Meline clutched her purse. I'm so sorry," she blurted. "The traffic, the Uber, you have every right to leave. I wouldn't blame you." Sebastian stared at her. He didn't smile. He didn't frown. He simply observed, eyes tracking her like he could read every fear she tried to hide. 47 minutes, he said softly. "I know," she whispered, gaze dropping to her boots. "I'm sorry." "Seat." It wasn't a request. It was a command that vibrated in her bones like the air itself had decided to obey him. Meline sat. Her legs trembled as she slid into the velvet booth opposite him. Up close, he was devastating, pale skin like carved marble, not sickly but unnaturally perfect. His presence felt heavy, like gravity leaned toward him. "I was told," Sebastian said, leaning back, "that you were desperate." Meline's pride flared, hot and sudden. "Excuse me?" "Lisa," he said as if the name annoyed him. "She told me you needed a benefactor." Meline's cheeks burned. She straightened her spine. "I agreed to dinner, Mr. Crow. Not a charity audit." Something flickered in Sebastian's expression, almost amusement. "Then why are you here?" he asked. Meline met his gaze even though her instinct screamed not to. "Because I have a son," she said. "And my pride doesn't pay for his medicine." Silence stretched between them like a wire pulled tight. Sebastian's pupils dilated slightly. For the first time he looked intrigued, like she'd finally spoken a language he understood. "A mother?" he murmured. "Protective. Fierce." willing to walk into the lion's den for her child. He leaned forward. His face was inches closer now, and Meline caught his scent. Rain, ozone, something metallic and ancient beneath it. Not cologne. Not soap. Something that didn't belong to modern life. "Do you know who I am?" he asked quietly. "You're Sebastian Crow," Meline said, voice unsteady. "An investor." "I am an investor," he agreed. "I invest in cities. In systems. In bloodlines. In history." Her throat went dry. "Bloodlines?" He reached out, hand hovering over hers without touching. His fingers were long, elegant, too still, too controlled. "But tonight," he continued, "I am simply a man who waited 47 minutes. Meline forced a breath. "Why?" Sebastian's gaze dropped to her wrist, to the pulse under her skin. "Because you are the first person in 300 years, he said softly, "who smells like her." "Her?" Meline whispered. Before she could ask more, the atmosphere shattered. A man in a trench coat walked past their booth, too fast, shoulders tense, hands shoved deep into his pocket. Sebastian's entire demeanor changed in a blink. The calm elegance vanished, replaced by something coiled and lethal. He didn't turn his head, but his eyes snapped to the man. "Down," Sebastian commanded. "What?" "Down." Sebastian moved with speed the human eye couldn't track. One moment he was seated. The next he was over the table, one arm shielding Meline, hand pressing her down into the velvet seat. Two muted pops sounded, like corks popping. The wine glass exploded into shards exactly where Meline's head had been. Screams erupted. Meline curled into herself, hands over her hair, heart hammering like it wanted out. She expected pain. She expected death. Instead, she heard a sound she would never forget. A growl, low, guttural, and not human. She looked up through her fingers. Sebastian stood between her and the gunman. The man raised the pistol again, silenced, steady. The second shot hit Sebastian squarely in the chest. Sebastian didn't fall. He didn't even flinch. Meline stared. The suit jacket had a bullet hole. But there was no blood. Sebastian glanced down at the hole with mild irritation, like someone had spilled wine on him. Then he looked at the gunman. His teeth were bared. And in the dim light, Meline saw them, long, white, needle-sharp fangs. "You ruined my date," Sebastian snarled. His voice carried power that made the glasses on nearby tables tremble. The gunman's eyes went wide with real fear. He dropped the weapon and ran. Sebastian turned back to Meline. His eyes glowed faintly red, then slowly cooled back toward icy blue. He offered her his hand. "We are leaving," he said, calm again, but with something monstrous still watching behind his eyes. "Now." The plaza's chaos faded behind them as Sebastian dragged Meline through service corridors and kitchen doors like the world was made of paper and he could tear through it. Chefs froze. Staff stepped back. No one dared block him. No one even asked questions. They burst into a side street where a matte black car waited, sleek, silent, expensive in a way that didn't seek attention. Sebastian pushed her into the passenger seat, slammed the door and slid behind the wheel. The engine purred like a restrained beast. The car launched forward, cutting through traffic with impossible precision, weaving between vehicles like it could predict every movement. "Slow down." Meline gripped the handle above the door, knuckles white. "You're going to kill us." Sebastian didn't look at her. "I cannot be killed by a car crash." Meline's breath caught. He took a sharp turn onto a darker street, tires whispering across black ice, the city lights thinning. "And neither can you," he added, "as long as you are with me." Meline stared at him. The fangs were gone. The red glow had faded. He looked human again, beautiful, calm, terrifyingly composed. But the bullet hole in his jacket was real. And the lack of blood was even more real. "You're not," her voice cracked. "Human." Sebastian's gaze stayed on the road. "No." Meline's mind spiraled. "Stop the car. Right now. I need to go home. I have a son." Sebastian slammed the brakes. The heavy car stopped in the middle of a silent street as snow began to fall, soft and slow, like the world didn't care that hers had just cracked open. He turned to face her. The temperature in the car dropped like winter had climbed inside with him. "You can get out," Sebastian said, voice emotionless. "You can walk to the subway. You can go back to Queens and hug your son." Meline's shaking hand moved toward the door latch. "But," he continued, leaning in slightly, "the man who tried to kill me did not miss." Meline froze. "He saw your face," Sebastian said softly. "He saw you sitting with me. He saw me protect you." Meline's blood turned cold. "To them," Sebastian whispered, You are no longer a random date. You are an associate of the Vampire King of New York. The title sounded insane. And yet, something in her bones understood it as truth. You are a loose end, Sebastian said. If you leave this car, you will be dead before sunrise. Meline's lips parted, but no sound came out. And they won't stop with you, he added, voice lower now, almost gentle. They will look for anyone connected to you. Meline's eyes filled with tears. Toby. Your son, Sebastian confirmed. The way he said it wasn't cruel. It was factual. Which was worse. They are ruthless, Sebastian said. They do not care about collateral damage. They only care about hurting me. He watched her like he was measuring something inside her, something he hadn't fully named yet. And tonight, he finished quietly, for reasons I do not yet understand, the universe decided to link your fate to mine. Meline's hand slipped off the door latch. Her whole body shook. Why me? She whispered. Sebastian's gaze dropped to her throat again, to the frantic pulse there. His expression shifted, not soft, not warm, but conflicted. Because, he said, when you walked into that room, I felt something I have not felt in 300 years. Meline swallowed. What? Sebastian's voice turned almost careful. Hope, he said. Outside, snow thickened, cloaking the street in white. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the car's tinted windows, something moved. Something that had been following them. Meline didn't see it. But Sebastian did. His eyes narrowed. His jaw tightened. And for the first time since she'd met him, he looked like a king preparing for war. The sanctuary of shadows. The snow fell thicker as the car rolled forward again, swallowing the city behind them. Meline sat frozen in the passenger seat, her hands clenched in her lap so tightly her fingers ached. Her mind replayed everything in broken flashes. The gunshot, the shattered glass, the glow in Sebastian's eyes, the word vampire echoing like a bad joke that refused to fade. This isn't real, she whispered, more to herself than to him. I'm dreaming. Or I hit my head. Sebastian didn't answer immediately. He drove with calm precision, one hand on the wheel, the other resting casually as if he hadn't just been shot in the chest without consequence. Humans often say that, he replied finally. Right before reality changes them. Meline swallowed hard. You said, they'll come after my son. Yes. The simplicity of the answer crushed her chest. Then take me home, she snapped, panic breaking through her fear. If I'm the target, keep me away from him. I don't care what happens to me. Sebastian glanced at her sharply, something ancient flickering behind his eyes. That is not how this works, he said. And not how you work. Meline laughed bitterly. You don't know anything about me. I know you walked into a room full of predators because your child needed medicine, Sebastian said quietly. I know you swallowed humiliation without complaint. I know you didn't scream when you saw my fangs, only worried about someone else. The words hit harder than she expected. The car slowed as they turned onto a narrow street lined with old brick buildings. Unlike the bright chaos of Midtown, this part of the city felt forgotten. Quiet, dim, wrapped in shadows even the streetlights couldn't fully pierce. At the end of the block stood an iron gate. Sebastian stopped the car. The gate opened on its own. Meline's breath caught. Did you? No, Sebastian said. It knows me. They passed through, the gate closing silently behind them. Beyond it lay a courtyard hidden from the rest of the city, snow drifting down onto dark stone paths and bare trees. At the far end stood a building that looked like a restored cathedral merged with a modern fortress. Arched windows, stone gargoyles, and sleek black glass woven together like past and present had struck a deal. This is where you live, Meline whispered. This is where I rule, Sebastian corrected. He parked and stepped out, moving around to open her door before she could even reach for it. The gesture caught her off guard, too gentle for someone so terrifying. Inside, the air was warmer, heavier, scented with incense and something metallic beneath it. The entrance hall stretched upward, vaulted ceilings disappearing into shadow. Candles burned in wall sconces, their flames unnaturally steady. Meline hugged herself. If this is where you kill people, I'd like to know now. Sebastian's lips twitched, not quite a smile. If I intended to kill you, Meline Hayes, you would already be dead. That didn't help. Footsteps echoed. Figures emerged from the shadows. Men and women dressed in dark clothing, their movements too smooth, their eyes too sharp. They all stopped when they saw her. And stared. Lower your gazes, Sebastian said softly. The effect was immediate. Every single one of them bowed their heads. Meline's knees nearly buckled. Sebastian placed a steadying hand at her back, guiding her forward. The touch was warm, solid, reassuring in a way she didn't want to admit she needed. "This is my inner court," he said as they walked. "They will not harm you." One of them, a tall woman with silver hair and eyes like frost, looked up despite the command. "A human?" she asked, voice laced with disbelief. "Here?" "She is under my protection," Sebastian said. The woman's gaze sharpened. "That is unprecedented." "So is tonight," Sebastian replied. They reached a set of carved wooden doors. Sebastian opened them into a quieter wing of the building. The sounds of the court faded behind them. "This room is warded," he said, ushering Meline inside. "No vampire can enter without my permission." The room was elegant but not ostentatious. Soft lighting, a fireplace already burning, a bed draped in dark blue linens. It felt safe. Meline turned slowly, overwhelmed. "You're keeping me prisoner," she said, her voice small. Sebastian shook his head. "I am keeping you alive." She faced him, fear and anger tangling together. "You don't get to decide my life just because you're powerful." Something shifted in him then, not anger, not threat, but respect. "You are correct," he said. "Which is why I will give you a choice." Meline stared. "You may stay here tonight, under my protection," Sebastian continued. "Or you may leave at dawn with an escort to wherever you wish." "And my son?" she demanded. Sebastian's gaze softened, just a fraction. "He will be guarded as well. I have already sent someone." Her heart lurched. "You sent a vampire near my child?" "A protector," he corrected. "One who owes me his existence." Meline sank onto the edge of the bed, exhaustion finally crashing through her adrenaline. "This is insane," she whispered. "Yes," Sebastian agreed. "But insanity is safer than ignorance." Silence stretched between them, filled only by the crackle of the fire. "Why me?" Meline asked again, her voice breaking. "Out of everyone in that room, why did you care if I lived?" Sebastian was quiet for a long moment. "Because I have ruled through fear for centuries," he said slowly. "And tonight, a woman who had every reason to be afraid chose courage instead." Meline looked up at him. "And because," he added, "you reminded me of who I was before I became king." Her chest tightened. "Who were you?" Sebastian met her gaze fully now, his eyes no longer icy, just old. "A man who lost everything." Before she could ask more, a sharp knock echoed at the door. Sebastian stiffened. The silver-haired woman from before stepped in, bowing quickly. "My king," she said. "The sanguine circle is moving. They know she survived." Meline's breath hitched. Sebastian's jaw tightened. "Then they will test my patience." He turned to Meline, his voice low but steady. "This is only the beginning," he said. "If you stay near me, your life will never be simple again." Meline thought of Toby. Of empty inhalers. Of a world that had never been simple to begin with. She lifted her chin. "Then I'll learn how to survive it," she said. Something unreadable crossed Sebastian's face. And for the first time in centuries, the vampire king smiled. The child of the night. Meline didn't sleep. She lay awake on the edge of the massive bed, the firelight flickering across the walls, every shadow seeming to breathe. The room was too quiet, not the comforting quiet of safety, but the heavy stillness of a place where powerful beings waited. She kept thinking of Toby. Of his small chest rising and falling. Of the sound he made when he laughed, the way he clutched her shirt when thunder scared him. If anything happened to him because of her. Her throat closed. A soft knock broke the silence. Meline flinched. "Sebastian." The door opened slowly. But it wasn't the vampire king who entered. It was a child. A boy, no older than 10, stood in the doorway, dark hair falling into eyes the same piercing blue as Sebastian's. He wore simple clothes, nothing royal, nothing extravagant. But his presence was unmistakable. Power hummed around him, restrained and barely contained. "I'm sorry," the boy said softly. "I didn't mean to scare you." Meline stood instinctively, heart pounding. "Who are you?" The boy hesitated. "My name is Lucien." Sebastian appeared behind him like a shadow taking shape. "You should not be here alone," Sebastian said, not sharply but with concern. Lucien looked up at him. "I wanted to see her." Meline's breath caught. "See me?" Lucien nodded, stepping forward despite Sebastian's silent tension. "You smell warm," he said, tilting his head curiously. "Not like the others." Sebastian stiffened. "Lucien." "It's okay," Meline said quickly, though fear flickered in her chest. "I'm not afraid." That was a lie. But it felt like the right one. Lucien's eyes lit up. "You're not." Meline shook her head gently. I'm a mom. I get scared every day. Lucien studied her intently. My mother used to say that. Sebastian went very still. Meline felt the weight of those words settle into the room. She died, Lucien added quietly. A long time ago. Something in Meline broke open then. Without thinking, she knelt in front of him so they were eye level. I'm sorry, she said, and meant it with every part of her. Lucien blinked, surprised. Everyone is. But I mean it, Meline said. Because losing a parent doesn't stop hurting. Even when people think it should. Lucien stared at her like she'd just spoken magic. Sebastian watched in silence. Lucien took a hesitant step closer. Do you miss her every day too? Meline swallowed. Yes. Lucien reached out and touched her hand. The room shifted. The fire flared. The air vibrated. Sebastian moved instantly, grabbing Lucien's wrist. Enough. Meline gasped as a strange warmth pulsed through her veins, like a heartbeat that wasn't hers. What just happened? She whispered. Sebastian stared at her hand where Lucien had touched her. Ancient symbols, faint, glowing for a single second, had appeared beneath her skin, then vanished. Lucien's eyes widened. Father, she has the mark. Sebastian's face drained of color. No, he said sharply. That is impossible. Meline's voice trembled. What mark? Sebastian released Lucien slowly. The blood oath, he said. A covenant older than my crown. Meline stood shakily. You're not making sense. Sebastian turned to her, his expression no longer controlled, no longer distant. For the first time he looked afraid. Long before I became king, he said, our kind believed balance required a bridge between worlds. A human soul capable of anchoring vampire power without corruption. Meline shook her head. You've got the wrong person. Lucien shook his head firmly. It's her. I felt it. Sebastian closed his eyes briefly as if steadying himself. You saved my son tonight, he said quietly. Meline frowned. I didn't do anything. You spoke to him, Sebastian said. You touched him without fear. You calmed him. Lucien nodded. She made the ache go away. Meline's heart shattered a little more. Sebastian opened his eyes again. The last woman who bore that mark was my queen. The word hung in the air. Queen. Meline laughed weakly. You've definitely lost it. But Sebastian didn't smile. She was human, he continued. She saved Lucien when he was an infant. And for that, the coven murdered her. Meline's stomach dropped. They feared what she represented, Sebastian said. A future where power could be softened by compassion. Silence pressed in around them. Lucien clutched Meline's sleeve. They won't hurt you. Father won't let them. Sebastian knelt in front of his son. I will burn the world before I let them touch her. The words weren't dramatic. They were a promise. Meline backed away slowly, overwhelmed. I didn't ask for this. I just wanted one night where my son didn't have to struggle. Sebastian rose, his gaze gentle now. And that is why fate chose you. She shook her head, tears spilling freely. I'm not strong enough. Sebastian stepped closer, but stopped short, giving her space. Strength is not cruelty, he said softly. It is endurance. Meline wiped her cheeks. What happens now? Sebastian exhaled slowly. The sanguine circle will come, he said. They will test you. They will try to break you. Lucien squeezed her hand. I'll help. Sebastian almost smiled at his son. You will stay, Sebastian said to Meline. Not as a prisoner. As my guest. Meline looked between father and son. One ancient, one young, both carrying wounds she recognized too well. She thought of Toby again. Of what kind of world she wanted for him. I'll stay, she said finally. But not because of destiny. Sebastian raised an eyebrow. I'll stay, she continued, because running has never saved me. Something shifted between them then. Not romance. Not yet. Respect. And something deeper, dangerous, slow, and inevitable. Far above the city, unseen eyes watched the sanctuary. And whispered her name. The trial of blood and mercy. The attack came at dawn. Not with screams. Not with explosions. But with silence. Meline felt it before she heard anything. A pressure in the air like the moment before a storm breaks. The sanctuary, which had pulsed softly with hidden life all night, went unnaturally still. Even the fire in the hearth dimmed, its flames bowing low as if afraid. Sebastian was already awake. He stood at the tall windows, hands clasped behind his back, posture calm, but his eyes burned like frozen stars. They're here, he said quietly. Meline's heart lurched. The sanguine circle? Yes. Lucien appeared beside him, his small face pale but resolute. They crossed the outer wards. Meline's instinct screamed run. Instead, she straightened her shoulders. What do they want from me? She asked. Sebastian turned to face her fully. They want to decide whether you deserve to live. Anger flared through her fear. I didn't ask for their permission. Sebastian's gaze softened. That is why they fear you. A deep bell tolled somewhere within the sanctuary, slow, heavy, ancient. Each echo vibrated through Meline's bones. They are invoking the trial, Lucien said quietly. Meline looked at him. Trial of what? Lucien hesitated. Sebastian answered for him. Blood and mercy. Meline laughed once sharply. Those don't sound compatible. They are not, Sebastian said. That is the point. Within minutes, the sanctuary transformed. The inner court assembled in the great hall, stone pillars rising like the ribs of a giant beast, shadows clinging to every corner. Torches ignited one by one, casting red-gold light across carved sigils older than nations. At the center stood a circular platform etched with symbols that made Meline's skin prickle. The silver-haired woman, Isolde, stepped forward, her expression grave. The sanguine circle has arrived, she announced. They demand judgment. From the far end of the hall, the shadows peeled back. They entered without sound. 7 figures, cloaked in crimson and black, their faces pale as moonbone. Their eyes gleamed with hunger and disdain as they looked at Meline, as if she were a mistake that had learned to breathe. One of them spoke, voice cold and echoing. A human stands in the king's sanctuary. Another sneered. Worse. A marked one. Sebastian stepped in front of Meline instantly. She is under my protection. A ripple of dark amusement passed through the circle. Your protection has failed before, one of them said softly. Hasn't it, Sebastian? Lucien stiffened. Meline felt Sebastian's anger flare, hot, restrained, dangerous. You will show respect, Sebastian said, or you will burn. The leader of the circle, a tall vampire with eyes like dried blood, smiled. We are here for respect, he replied. For the law. Meline stepped forward before Sebastian could stop her. Every eye snapped to her. You want to judge me? She said, her voice shaking but loud. Fine. But don't hide behind rituals. Sebastian turned sharply. Meline. She looked back at him. You said I had a choice. Something unreadable passed over his face. The circle murmured. Very well, the leader said. Then the trial proceeds. The symbols on the floor ignited with crimson light. Isolde spoke solemnly. The human will stand alone. No protection. No weapons. No king. Meline's stomach dropped. Sebastian's voice cut through the hall like steel. I will not allow. You will, the circle leader interrupted. Or we declare you compromised. And then, we take the child. Lucien gasped. Meline's blood went cold. Sebastian froze. Slowly, painfully he lowered his hand. Meline turned to him, eyes wide. Sebastian. His jaw tightened, every instinct screaming against the command he was bound to obey. I will be watching, he said quietly. Every breath. Meline stepped onto the platform. The heat surged instantly, like standing too close to a fire mixed with biting cold. The symbols crawled up her legs like living things, stopping just below her heart. State your worth, the circle demanded. Meline swallowed. I don't know your laws, she said. But I know what it means to be judged without mercy. A low hiss rippled through the vampires. Mercy is weakness, one spat. Meline lifted her chin. Then you've never needed it. The circle leader gestured. A blade appeared in his hand, thin, elegant, humming with power. Blood proves truth, he said. One cut. Meline's breath caught. She extended her arm anyway. The blade sliced her palm. Pain flared. Her blood spilled onto the sigils. The room shuddered. The symbols erupted in blinding white light. Meline screamed, not in pain but in shock, as a wave of energy tore through the hall, knocking several vampires back. Sebastian surged forward, but an invisible barrier held him in place. Lucien cried out, clutching his chest. Meline. Sebastian shouted. The circle staggered, disbelief etched across their faces. Impossible, one whispered. She's amplifying the bloodline. Meline dropped to her knees, gasping. Images flooded her mind, ancient forests, burning castles, a woman standing beside Sebastian with love and defiance in her eyes. His queen. She looked up, trembling. You want to know my worth? she said hoarsely. I don't take power. I hold it steady. The circle leader stared at her, shaken. You are a conduit. Meline clenched her bleeding hand. I'm a mother. The words echoed. The energy settled. Silence crashed down. Slowly the barrier fell. Sebastian crossed the distance in a blink, dropping to his knees beside her, pulling her into his arms without hesitation. His hands shook. You should never have had to do that, he said fiercely. Meline leaned into him, exhausted. I'd do worse to protect a child. The circle stood silent. Finally the leader bowed just slightly. The trial is concluded, he said. She lives. Sebastian's voice was deadly calm. And she is untouchable, the leader admitted. By law. A collective gasp rippled through the court. Lucien ran forward, throwing his arms around Meline. You did it, he cried. Meline laughed weakly, tears spilling freely. Guess I passed. Sebastian looked at her like she had rewritten his world. Later, in the quiet aftermath, Sebastian stood with her on a balcony overlooking the city. You defied them, he said softly. Without violence. Meline rested her bandaged hand on the railing. Violence is easy. Kindness is terrifying. Sebastian turned to her fully. You have changed everything, he said. For my people. For my son. For me. She met his gaze, steady now. I'm not your queen, she said gently. I know, Sebastian replied. Then after a pause. But if you ever choose to be, the crown would finally mean something. Snow began to fall again, soft and quiet. Below them, the city breathed on, unaware that its future had just shifted. The choice that changes eternity. The city looked fragile from the balcony. So many lights. So many lives. So many people who would never know how close their world had come to tearing itself apart. Meline stood with her arms wrapped around herself, the bandage on her palm still faintly warm, as if something inside her hadn't finished settling yet. Sebastian stood beside her, silent. Not distant. Not cold. Just careful. You should leave, he said at last. Meline turned to him slowly. What? You won your protection, Sebastian continued. The circle cannot touch you. Or your son. His jaw tightened. But staying here will make you a symbol. And symbols get destroyed. Meline searched his face. Is this what you want? Sebastian didn't answer immediately. His eyes followed a snowflake as it melted against the stone railing. What I want, he said quietly, has never been safe. Meline felt the weight of those words. She thought of Toby. Of bedtime stories in hospital rooms. Of a life where she was always tired and always afraid, and always moving forward anyway. I don't want a crown, she said. I don't want power. Sebastian nodded. I know. I want my son to grow up in a world where he's protected, she continued. Where kindness doesn't make him weak. Sebastian's voice dropped. Then I will build that world. Before Meline could respond, pain exploded through the air. Sebastian stiffened. His breath hitched. Meline. He staggered back, one hand clutching his chest. Blood, dark, thick, unmistakably real, spread across his shirt. Meline screamed. Sebastian. The air rippled as shadows tore open behind him. A vampire stepped through, one of the circle, his eyes wild, his blade pulsing with forbidden magic. For the old order, the traitor hissed. Sebastian collapsed to one knee. Meline moved without thinking. She ran. Sebastian grabbed for her. Don't. Too late. The traitor lunged. Meline stepped between them. The blade plunged toward her heart. And stopped. The mark beneath her skin ignited. Light burst from her chest, pure and blinding. The blade shattered. The vampire screamed as the energy rebounded, throwing him backward into the shadows from which he came, gone, erased, like a mistake corrected by the universe. Sebastian stared at Meline in shock. She dropped to her knees beside him, hands already pressing against his wound. Stay with me, she begged. Please. His blood soaked her palms. This is not possible, Sebastian rasped. That blade was forged to kill kings. Then you're not dying, Meline said fiercely. I won't allow it. Something ancient responded to her will. The mark flared brighter. Meline felt warmth pour from her into him, not draining her but steadying him like a bridge locking into place. Sebastian gasped as the wound closed beneath her hands. His heartbeat, once faltering, grew strong again. Lucien appeared, tears streaming down his face. Father. Sebastian drew a sharp breath and pulled Meline against him, holding her like he might never let go. You chose, he whispered into her hair. You could have run. Meline laughed shakily against his chest. I told you. Running never saved me. He pulled back just enough to look at her. Not as a king. Not as a monster. But as a man in awe. You saved my life, he said. Again. Meline wiped her cheeks. Looks like we're even. Sebastian smiled, fully, openly, for the first time. Days later, Meline stood at the gates of the sanctuary with a small bag at her feet. Toby stood beside her, bundled in a warm coat, his eyes wide with wonder as Lucien showed him how snow caught moonlight. You don't have to leave, Sebastian said quietly. Meline touched Toby's hair. He needs a normal life. School. Friends. Sunshine. Sebastian nodded. And you? Meline met his gaze. I need to choose him. Every time. Sebastian stepped forward and placed something small in her palm, a simple silver ring unadorned. Not a crown, he said. A promise. She closed her fingers around it. I'll come back, she said. When I'm ready. Sebastian bowed his head slightly, not as a king but as a man who respected her choice. Lucien hugged her tightly. Your family. Meline hugged him back. Always. As Meline and Toby walked into the waking city, Sebastian watched from the shadows. He didn't chase. He didn't command. He waited. Because for the first time in centuries, the vampire king believed in something stronger than fate. Choice. And somewhere deep in the blood and bones of the world, an ancient balance settled at last.